What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting edition of Hangout and Hobby. I'm live. It is not even that sunny, but somewhat sunny Monday morning here in Florida, and I am joined by the one and only Jay from Mohawk Miniatures. Jay, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, my dude. How are you?
I am fantastic. Happy to be here. This is, of course, our weekly Monday show where Jay, in his infinite patience and wisdom and talent, is here to teach me more and more advanced tips about how to paint. So, buckle in, stay tuned.
God, every week you make me sound better and better and better, and I promise you, I'm not talented and I'm not wise. I've just made lots of bad decisions in my life and try not to repeat them. That's all.
Look, I'm getting better and better at painting, so I'm going to make you sound better and better. That's the way it works, right? That's what I'm here for.
We'll go with it. We'll roll with it.
So, thank you so much for joining us live. All of you who are here, hang out in the chat, hang out with us while we paint. Maybe even learn a thing or two. This is basically like getting a free coaching lesson from Jay. Except I'm paying for it, not you. So,
That's true.
so hopefully everyone's here to enjoy that. Of course, if you like getting some of this nice hobby content, make sure you go check out all of Jay's channels. You can find him on both YouTube and Twitch under Mohawk Miniatures. He apparently streams 8 days a week, 40 hours a weekend, also 40 hours a week. Paints a Thunderhawk in between, brunch and afternoon tea. I just assume that's what happens over there.
Listen, both brunch and afternoon tea are proper meals, and they are an integral part of the British civilization.
Yeah, and they're just one Thunderhawk apart.
Exactly. Like, where else are you going to get tiny little sandwiches and little tiny bits of cake that you can eat 17 of before you start thinking, oh, that was a bit excessive?
That does sound nice. And of course, if you want even more Art of War content, make sure that you like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe, and you can even go check out the link in the description below to get access to the Worm. That's where we teach our high-quality 40K tactics, and that's where you can get a free 3-day trial right now. All right, Jay.
I've noticed that you're like this far away from 40,000 subscribers as well.
I genuinely, I'm hoping that we hit it like.
Come on.
Like I want to hit 40K like right around 10th edition and just be like,
Absolutely.
bang, 40K for 40K.
It's a sign, right?
Exactly, it's a sign of the awesomeness of 10th edition that's coming our way.
And let's be fair, guys, as well, with any edition change, there's a lot that you need to know, because the biggest thing with an edition change is the hangover of the rules in your head from an old edition, which you've got to realize don't exist anymore. Yeah. So you're going to need that coaching and need that help. So definitely check out some content around that time.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. It is going to be just a ton of fun. Just a ton of fun. They're showing off these new models. I mean, I think Warhammer Fest this week, they said you're going to be able to play 10th edition.
Yes.
So
yes. For Warhammer Fest, you'll be able to have like an intro game. Yes, that's what they did for the 7th to 8th change that I was there for.
Nice.
So.
I've got to assume that it means that they're going to have like just like a starter box and like 500 points of Tyranids, 500 points of Space Marines, which I want because I want to just see what all these Tyranid models are. Like that's what's really getting me excited right now. But you'll actually be there, so unfortunately I won't be making it, but I'm sure it's going to be a really exciting time.
It's going to be great, dude. I'm going to be in the tournament with probably my Nurgle Demons, but maybe the Thunderhawk I've just painted, which is just crying out for a game.
You know what I'm going to say.
But probably just a Nurgle Demon.
Oh, come on. How often are you going to get to play with the Thunderhawk?
I've been playing with it all weekend, to be honest.
Yeah, fair.
That camera goes off, and I'm just like...
That's the best part of it, isn't it? All right, so we have...
hello to the chat as well. We've got Azula Araman, Kozilex Inquisitor, that sounds like a great name, and Elden Warden says, hello, Art of War. Starting Drukhari for 10th ed, currently converting Khainite Shadowstalkers into 30 Mandrakes. 30 Mandrakes will be meta, mark my words.
Elden Warden, I completely believe you. Only because of the conviction and because GW would never release a rule set to inconvenience someone who just finished a hobby project.
One golden rule I found of any edition or codex change is if your unit was really, really good in the previous edition, they're going to balance it by making it slightly less good. And if your unit was really, really bad before, they're going to balance it by making it more good. And sometimes they go a little far with that. So if you've got an army, you're like, well, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to buy or paint or whatever. It's usually okay to start getting all the stuff that you don't want to use right now because it's probably gonna be all right soon enough, right?
Yeah, see, with things that are sometimes bad, sometimes broken, that's true. But there's the other side of it, which is that GW just writes rules to make certain things good. It's like how, since I started playing in 4th edition, the Flying Hive Tyrant has just been good
Yes.
the whole time. Just
Yes.
the entirety of the time. Like I have a metal Hive Tyrant before they even made wings for it that I took some Heroescape Dragon wings and put those on the metal Hive Tyrant. And
Nice.
that's been the way for more than half my life.
I can't wait to see the shelf, the evolution. You know how you get the T-shirt that's like monkey and so on and so on and so on into man. I can't wait to see the setup in your hobby station of like Tyrannid Warrior, Hive Tyrant, more Hive Tyrant, extra Hive Tyrant, new Hive Tyrant, new Hive Tyrant. Just that full spectrum is gonna be brilliant, dude.
I think at this stage, I believe I own I think I own 12 or 13 Hive Tyrants.
So you're the guy. You're the reason why they introduced the rule of three. That is what we're saying.
No, they're not all flying ones. I just have like, I have a metal one, I have a fine cast one, I have 3 plastic ones with wings, I have one that's converted out of the Lord of the Rings Fell Beast.
No way.
Yeah, then I have a Swarm Lord. I have an old Swarm Lord that I didn't paint well, so I just got a new one. I have 2 magnetized Walking Hive Tyrants, because sometimes I do that. I have the Forge World Walking Hive Tyrant. I have the Forge World Flying Hive Tyrant. I actually wasn't counting, even though I was bopping my fingers during that. But I don't know, it's a lot. And then I have 3 more Flying Hive Tyrants in a different color scheme, plastic.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very nice. See, John's the Hive Tyrant man.
well, I'm a Hive Tyrant guy. I've got a lot of them.
John is clearly like not the Norn Queen, but you know.
I'll honestly, you know what? I'll take it.
Cool.
Norn Queen, Norn King, doesn't matter to me. All right,
Norn King. There we go. That's what we need.
there we go.
Shall we do some painting, John?
We shall. We've been working on Assault Intercessor singular for like the last edition or so. There's one Assault Intercessor. Ooh,
Yeah.
Sean is saying congrats to Jay over the weekend. Did I miss a successful outing for? No, of course not. This is the paint stream.
It was the stream anniversary. It was
Yeah.
the stream's 4th anniversary this weekend, and we had a humongous giveaway. Part of it is this gigantic lump, which I will just put on screen briefly so people can see the magnificence of it. But on Saturday morning, this was just black primer, and as you can see, progressed reasonably well over the weekend. This was given away. This and the rest of what would be a 4,500 point Space Marine army was given away, along with a load of other stuff. And it was an amazing event. I'm so happy with how this has turned out. 30 odd hours of work. I've got a little bit more to do because we didn't quite get the freehand done that I wanted. We got 2 scrolls to paint on it, one each side, and lettering and stuff. But God, it's beautiful. Yeah, I'm buzzed. I really want to play a game with it. So if anyone lives in the UK and fancies a game of 40k, I will have the Thunderhawk handicap. By all means, hit me up. Anyway, that was the weekend. Now I am broken. My wrists basically don't work anymore because I'm having to do various somewhat suggestive hand grips, according to most of the chat and my 12-year-old brain. And so we're going to paint something small that feels so light in comparison to that.
Well, I'm just happy that after the last month or so, I can just make you paint one more Space Marine. Just one more.
Well, I'm going to repaint part of one I painted earlier on because we're doing the soft fabric, cloth, leather, essentially, bits on a Marine. And the one I've been painting for you clearly has none of those. Anyway, he's a lean, mean fighting machine, whereas this guy is going camping for a weekend, as you can tell by all of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some nice, fairly realistic-looking worn leather. So we're going to start off by painting everything in a nice warm brown. Now you can paint leather any color. I mean, think about the number of different colors, leather jackets and stuff you can get. You can do whatever you like. All right. I think that for a lot of minis, let's take this guy as a good example, I suppose. we've talked about creating focal points on the model. We know that you've got normally 3 on a miniature. The first one is always the model's eyes. Everything should come into that. The next thing is usually what is held in the model's hands. And on this mini, we've got them all in a nice line. So you'll look at the mini and you'll see every single one in this beautiful little line right across the top. Great, perfect. What we don't want to do, especially when minis get a little busy, and we have something like this with extra stuff here and there, is have that detract from the overall effect. We don't want that kind of giving a bit of visual interference to the focal points on the mini. So I try and paint these in neutral colors. So black, gray, brown. Anything past that, I think, is probably a little much. But it depends, of course, on the color scheme you're going for. If you've done a marine that is brown, then you probably want to paint them black so they stand out and don't look all the same thing, but still just sort of fade into the background. You've done a white scar with like tie-dye pink being an extra part of the pattern. You can probably do what you like. It's not going to interfere too much. So you've got room. But for me, neutral colors is the way. So we're going to kick off with a base of a dark reddish brown. So warm colors work quite well for this kind of thing because leather's a natural material. It's skin, essentially. So I'm going to use Rhinox hide. John, you have got something similar?
I have Army Painter Oak Brown, which is similar to Rhinox.
Here we go. And I just want to highlight this, actually. This is really important. When you're painting, unless you're doing something particularly high profile or something that you need an absolutely specific effect on, you can pretty much use any paint, especially if it's just like army painter standard, and not like as in I painted a line, but just I'm painting an army. Here are all my dudes en masse. I just need to get them done. As long as the paint is of a high enough quality to be able to flow nicely off your brush and thin well and turn into glazes and all that sort of stuff, which most hobby paints can do at least reasonably okay. Don't get too hung up on buying from a particular brand. Just try and find the color that you want.
Yeah.
I get asked a lot from people like, oh, what paint exactly was that? And I almost just want to say, well, it was brown sometimes, because sometimes that's all that matters. It's not an important part of the model. It's not an integral part of the design or anything. It's just brown.
Just get some brown on it. And maybe, if you want it a little lighter, if you want it a little warmer, just add a little color.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the best things about working with you, John, is that you're absolutely not afraid to do things. So a lot of hobbyists get stuck into, I need to buy this specific pot of paint. We were talking earlier on, saying, well, we need an ochre color. You're like, well, I don't really have one, so I'm just going to mix some orange into some brown, and that'll give me something that's about right. And that is how painting was before we started having paints that would have like labels for, this is your base paint, this is your layer paint, your highlight paint, whatever. So again, don't fall into that trap. Paint's a paint.
So out of curiosity, how would you make a brown warmer if you didn't have one on hand that you liked? Would you add because obviously the obvious thing that jumps to mind is, add white, it'll be slightly lighter, add black, it'll be slightly darker. But then that doesn't necessarily make it warmer, and it can also mute the colors a little bit if I were to add white to this to a dark brown. Yeah.
If you add white or black, you're desaturating paint, essentially. So saturation is the amount of color that something has. If you get like Instagram and you go to your filters at the bottom, saturation, slide it up, they put more color. It's like down, they take color away by adding black and white to things, right? So adding white to something will normally make it more of a pastel shade, which isn't necessarily what you're after.
Yeah.
Adding a warm colors, think about the colors that are fire. It's, you've got a nice open fire in front of you, logs and kindling and all that jazz. You're looking at things like your reds, your oranges, anything in that kind of area of the color spectrum. If you add that to brown, it will work. Now, brown is usually our 3 primary colors all mixed together. So a warm brown has basically got a heavier weighting of red, or if you're using like magenta, cyan, yellow as your primary, slightly more magenta. That's all you need. If you have, let's say you had something like Steel Legion Drab. This is a kind of mid-tone neutral brown. It's not particularly weighted in like a green direction, so blue and yellow being dominant, not red direction. This is kind of neutral. It's kind of an even-ish mix, right? And it's kind of light because white at some point has been added to it to get it to this.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to add a little bit of black and a little bit of red, you could get something close to this, at least. And most people have got the three primary colors, white and black. You know, if you have just that, you can probably paint pretty much anything. So don't be afraid to experiment. At the end of the day, if you make something in a palette and you think that's just absolutely terrible, try again.
Let's try it again. So, hello to everyone who's joining us in the chat. Ape of Justice, good to see you in there. That is a fantastic name. I just want to comment on that. I like calling out usernames that are inspiring to me, and Ape of Justice is one of those. We're doing great today. The lesson today is we're painting the soft bits of the miniature, which means that we're going to be mostly focusing on the leather pouches, like what we've got here, as well as some of the the rubber joints between the power armor, kind of like that black body glove that you can see in between armor plates sometimes.
Okay.
And
so you should have a decent base coat of black.
I sure do.
Yeah, excellent. What you do now is start lighting it up. Now I'm going to take this Bogrim brown. This is a really nice ochre color from P3. GW do one which is their Tau names. Tau light ochre.
I think it's literally like Tau ochre.
Yeah. The reason I like using this with brown is because I used to have a brown leather wallet, and it lives in your pocket, and the edges get frayed. And leather is basically like a thin skin over material, and the bit underneath it, I always find to be a really warm, orangey kind of color. So I like using this for brown. I think it gives a very natural look to it. Mm-hmm. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this on the palette, and then we're going to mix a little bit of Rhinox hide with this. And I'm probably looking to do a 2 parts Rhinox hide to 1 part Bogrim brown. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to highlight, using this, all of the small areas that would be a natural highlight. So we're going to do the normal light mapping, essentially. Here's the areas that would be brighter, and that's it. Once we've done that, and we've sort of mapped out where things are going to go, we can then start looking at doing tiny scratches. So when we're doing battle damage, and we've got battle damage to do on the Marine, actually, just like a full set of battle damage and weathering and so on. Once you start looking at battle damage, what you're doing is you're telling a story. So often people look at their minis and they go, here's my Space Marine, and that's it. Because it's on a little base, and it's just a one dude, right? Mm-hmm. And I really, really encourage people to start thinking about things slightly differently. Instead of thinking this is a base for your mini, or you think of it as a plinth for a single miniature diorama. As soon as you start thinking like that, then you have more room for narrative elements of your model to come to life. So, for instance, on this Black Templar, we've got little bits of damage. We've got marks that he might have put in for awards that he's got, and so on and so forth. But the battle damage that we've got shouldn't necessarily all be brand new. Mm-hmm. And some damage will be extremely light and superficial. It will just be where he's like walked into something or whatever, you know?
Yeah, like just scraped his leg up against a rock as he was running. Yeah,
exactly. Some damage could be a lot more than that. Some damage could be old. It could be something. Maybe these pouches are things that he's had for, I don't know, Space Marines live years and years and years. He might have had these for a couple of decades or something. But it's got some sort of sentimental attachment to him, like it's I don't know, his lucky holster or whatever. Not superstitious, but you kind of get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. No,
people adding in that wear and tear before you get to damage, I think is really important.
Okay. I like the mindset here. I'm gonna have to. I don't have them with me, unfortunately. It's the only models that aren't at the stream house right now. I have to send you some pictures of the Sentinels I've been working on, because
yes,
I've spent about $70 on. Oh no, more than that. Hold on. I've spent about $90 on Space Marines, just to get orcs for the bases of my guard army.
Sorry, you spent $90 on Space Marines.
Yeah.
To get orcs for the bases of your guard army.
Exactly. So I bought a separate Helbricht and a separate Bayard's Revenge.
Oh, right, yes.
And
like, what the f*** is he doing? I'm with you. Yes, Bayard's Revenge and Halbrecht and all that. Right.
Yeah, so I took the bases from Helbrecht and Bayard's Revenge, and I just put Sentinels on them because they're
Nice.
giant, over-the-top diorama bases for a Space Marine character that
Yes,
are
they are.
perfectly acceptable for a Sentinel. I mean, obviously, I put them on the right size base because they came with like 60 mils and 50 mils or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so like the orc that's just getting like just flattened on his back, like just like falling over in Bayard's Revenge. I cut the leg of a Sentinel and have him kind of planting his foot on that guy's chest and kicking him down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because my guard is Steel Legion, so I have to put orcs on all my bases.
Of course they are. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really have your Steel Legion. I mean, I could put like Khorne and World Eaters and Demons on it, but then I'd have to kill everyone who saw it, and that's a mess.
To be fair, it's time consuming, right? And that's a lot of dinner parties to afford for people as well.
It's a lot. Yeah.
I do hope someone gets that reference. But... so with the highlights here, make sure you leave plenty of the darker shadow. So on the holster, I don't know why they do this, but there's always two channels in it, and you end up with this weird like 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. But get your highlights, make sure they're reasonably liberal, and it doesn't matter if you take a couple of layers to do it. Work thin so we've got those smoother gradients and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, as much as this is a kind of incidental part of the miniature, and it doesn't really make much in the way of things that stand out, and that's entirely the point. That's no excuse to do it badly. Like if we look at this as training for painting a character mini, you wouldn't want your character mini, your army centerpiece, to be a little slapdash in places and so on.
Yeah, I'm with it. No, leather's a good thing to learn because like every character has like some kind of glove or pistol or
absolutely
or thing. Yeah, like Custodes, an army that I just like until you like literally look at it, you're like, oh, this army is all gold. Then you're like, wait a minute, they all have leather gloves on, fingerless gloves. It's the funniest thing. Right. For everyone in the chat,
I never really understood that. I wondered if there was something underneath, or they were just like literally getting their biker gloves on and off they went.
I think they literally were putting on their biker gloves, and then they went. For everyone who's watching us in the chat, by the way, if you're watching from work, if you're hanging out on a Monday morning, or if you're doing some hobbying of your own, let us know what you're working on. I always love hearing what people are painting while they're hanging out with us. It's always fun to hear about other people's hobby projects.
And if you're enjoying the content, just give a quick thumbs up at the bottom of the stream. It's kind of...
Yeah, it's easy to do, but it's important. Just a little thumbs up. Click it.
Yeah. It helps John out. It helps more people come and see this as well. So, if you're enjoying it, share. And my YouTube is completely frozen, so I can't see anything you're talking.
Oh. Well, it looks like it's operational on my end, so I think we're still good to go.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
My Chrome window is like, no, you don't need this.
Yep, fair. Alrighty. Here we go. So just get this.
Judge Bud is recovering. I'm not surprised, dude. How's the foot? Yeah. Was unfortunately having some medical issues. So I hope he's doing all right now.
I hope you are, Judge Bud. If not, I hope you recover quickly. Building the Hydra tank from Marvel Crisis Protocol. Oof, I tripped over that word.
What's the Hydra tank?
I can only assume that it's... I immediately was thinking like guard anti-aircraft, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
I'm just gonna assume that a Hydra tank is like one of those like I'm thinking the first Captain America. I don't know if is Marvel Crisis Protocol, is that based off of the movies or the comics, or does it just grab a little bit for everything?
I think it's kind of all of it, to be honest.
That's kind of what I assumed, is they just pick and choose, rule of cool it up.
Like, I really love Marvel comics. I grew up reading Marvel comic books as a kid, and the
Same
movies are just amazing fun for me and all that. And I've got Wolverine and Sabretooth from Marvel Crisis Protocol on my giveaway shelf that I'd really like to have an opportunity to paint at some point. And the Wolverine there is like traditional comic book Wolverine, yellow and blue lycra kind of fighting suit and stuff. So it's not like Logan from the movies. It's comic book Wolverine. So I guess it's kind of a good mix of stuff here and there. Colin Prott says, working on my 5th Ultramarines army,
And
and I'm not selling this one.
There you go.
That's the voice of conviction right there, you know?
Absolutely. Colin, I'm glad to hear it. You hold on to this Ultramarine army. Cherish them. Add a bunch of new Tyrannic War veterans or whatever's coming out in this box set. And I like the Tyrannic War veteran lieutenant they showed. I'm hoping that they do a whole unit of that. I think that'd be cool. All right.
Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm very lightly, and this is kind of the point, you can just about see these strikes, I think, putting in some nice thin, and they need to be thin lines. What this is going to do is form the background of our wear and tear. So go mad, do loads, but keep them really light. So keep your paint nice and thin, nice thin brush strokes. Essentially, this is not really going to be seen. It's something that will exist on the model, but it's something that won't actually have any real impact. What this is kind of like when you go out for a meal and the chef has taken his time to season your food properly and, you know, put that care and attention into it that the food deserves. You don't notice it when it's been done right, but you do notice it when it's not there. And this is one of those things that's a bit like that. So we're creating at the moment like the staging ground for our next bits of damage. So one thing you can focus on is things that would naturally get bumped and knocked and damaged and scratched. So this is the holster for this bolt pistol. Bolt pistol is a brutal weapon, right? So you can imagine that the top part of the holster, the flap, is constantly being scrabbled at with a power armored gauntlet. It's probably going to get battered about a little bit.
Seems
when
like
the pistol goes in and out, it's going to drag across this section here. We're going to get wear here. So think about those sorts of things.
Okay. Add just a little bit.
Again, this is one of those moments where you have to start thinking about the story, the narrative, the reason the guy's there, the time he spent. And I find this a really wonderful element of miniature painting because you're sort of immersing yourself in this one dude's story. It could be anything. It doesn't need to be a Marine. It could be a guardsman. Hey, it could even be an alien, like a Tyranid warrior or something like that. You know, battle damage on Tyranids is actually a really cool thing to do because you've got flesh damage. So it could be bruising. It could be scars. The chitin, the armor plates could be chipped and scratched and, you know, everything else. And it's a really cool way, I think, of looking at the minis that we play Warhammer with because you get more of that personal kind of connection to it. So when it's your own army, it really does mean something.
All right, I like it. Let's just freshen up.
Yes, I know we're talking like the sort of grandiose, slightly
It's gonna be
slightly bullshitty parts of the hobby now, but honestly, for me, it's a big thing.
No, I still enjoy it. I haven't always had the capability to, but I've always appreciated that side of the hobby.
I remember seeing a thread on a forum. I think it was probably something like Daka or something. Many
throwback.
Years ago, of somebody that had spent over a year converting a knight. It was a knight freeblade, and they had a pilot that they had created a bit of a story for. And the knight was a freeblade knight, and it was an old knight, and it was kind of just being held together by duct tape, hopes and prayers, you know, that sort of thing. And they went so far as to work out how the pilot of the knight lives as well as fights. So the model is a gaming piece rather than just a display piece. But there were the chains and handholds and things for to get into and out of the hatch at the top. And then if you looked under one of the shoulder pads, you'd see things like a bedroll and kettle and stuff like that, things that she'd use to feed and sustain herself while she was out fighting. Because you're not going to be fighting 24/7. There'll be bits of like downtime in a battle where, like, okay, I need food, I need sleep and stuff. And it's those little bits of story, I think, that make part of the game a little bit more awesome.
Yeah, that's actually something I really want to add a lot of to my guard army. And I'm going to do it after I'm done painting the tank. But I want to actually glue on all of the little like human elements that guard tanks come with more than like a Space Marine tank does. You know what I mean? Like the shovel on the
I do
side, the
indeed.
bed
Yeah,
rolls.
your shovels, your bed rolls, your boxes for storage for things. Yeah.
I'll send you a picture when it's all done. But I actually you know how like the deathcore like kit comes with like a bunch of like little extras that like go on the like on like the bedroll and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, there's one of them that has like a soup cup or like a coffee cup like hanging off the back.
Nice.
And this took an insane amount of time to do, but I shaved it off, removed that cup, and then
Okay.
I took the metal arm that also comes in the kit, and I cut the wrist, rotated a little bit, did a little bit of conversion, so that that metal arm is holding the soup cup, like the coffee cup.
Awesome.
And that's actually on my tank commander.
That's
And
brilliant.
so my tank commander is sitting in the cupola with a cup of coffee.
I
Because
love that.
not everyone is fighting at the same time. And naturally, since it's my tank commander, I'm going to be painting Meticulous Caffeinator on the side, just to keep the joke going.
I love it. See, that's the bit of personality that you can put into your toys to really make them cool and special.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely gotten to the point where I can four-color a tournament army. I know how to do that. You know, but it's you got a little extra flair sometimes.
Good. Okay, my dude. So I've done plenty of that. Let me know when you think you're at a good stage, and we'll carry on.
Yeah, just kind of going over it because it was a little bit light, it's a little bit hard to see. And I know it's supposed to be hard to see, but I couldn't see it at all. And I decided I
Okay.
wanted a little more than that.
Good stuff. The next step is going to be essentially to add more of the Bogrim Brown and do more of it.
Mhm.
And then the last step will be using almost pure Bogrim Brown. So
Ooh.
the next step shouldn't even really be like mostly Bogrim. It should be still like a maybe 50-50 or 60-40 to the lighter color.
Okay.
And the last bit will be those like really like important bits like the corners where it has definitely rubbed on things a lot more often than anything else. Like the flat surfaces generally probably don't get too much in the way of scratches and stuff on. But the corners of anything, that's usually the weak point. That's where it's going to take more damage.
Yep.
I mean, look at the codexes in your army bags, boys and girls.
Yep. That's what gets
Corners will
worn.
probably look like shit. The facings will probably look okay.
Yeah, the spine of our Chaos Space Marine Codex is like just disintegrating. Just funny because we haven't touched
Right
the
now, I
thing
know
since
the
the last. There we go. Yep, a lot of wear and tear right around that flap at the top.
Downvoting People says, I love how much of that stuff is on the Vox kits. I've only done the one I did for Rich, the two I did for Rich, so I haven't had much experience with them. But I think from seeing the pictures, there's loads of like little affectations that you can imagine they all have and use and stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that's something that they've gone for, is just having that nice like sci-fi. Because like honestly, even though Votan is obviously not, the kits feel very just futuristic human. And so they definitely added a lot of human element to that.
Nice. Also, Damian is working on some Tau Pathfinders, and also working on Tau is Abel Alburn, who's got a Cadre Fireblade and a few Crisis suits. I'm putting Sept markings all over. You doing those with a brush, or have you got decals for it, or what's your process?
Yeah, happy to hear everyone else in the channel is doing some hobbying too. All right, so let's get this a little bit lighter.
So on this, make it slightly more pronounced. Still keep your paint strokes, your brush strokes nice and thin. Remember, we're thinking about the scale of damage. If we put a thick paint line on, it would be like me having a scrape the width of my finger on a jacket. That's going to look really out of place. It needs to be something much more like the thickness of my brush, for instance. So scale is very important in telling the story. We're trying to create that illusion that this is the way it's been. And don't worry about painting this over all of the stripes that you've done, but also as part of this, add in a little bit of a highlight as well. Not many highlights, more damage showing the highlight. So what I mean by that, for instance, is let's take the top flap of this holster on this bit. I'd like to put a highlight here. If I just paint a line around there, it's going to look a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly stipple on that line. So have you done stippling yet, John?
I was about to call you out on that. I have not.
Okay, so let me explain stippling just briefly then. The way stippling works is you take the end of your brush and you do a dot on the marine. You ever seen an Andy Warhol painting?
I have.
Like the old pop art things. Excellent. Good reference. He used lots of little circles, basically, to create shape and color and texture and everything else. It's a really cool way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
Stippling is that, but rather than do it with your brush going like directly onto something or like into something, that's going to really ruin your brush quickly. You want to use the tip, but at the side of the brush. So instead of pushing onto something, you're sort of dotting onto something with just the end of the tip. And the trick here is to just barely graze the surface that you're painting on. It takes a little bit of time to get used to.
Mm-hmm.
If you go too far, you'll get too big of a dot. If you don't compress hard enough, you won't get a dot. And your paint needs to be probably a little bit thinner to do stippling, because it needs to have that nice flow off the brush. But just like we were doing with glazing back in our first and second lesson together, instead of like making sure you've got plenty of paint in your brush to do loads of work, keep the amount of paint in your brush really low. When you're stippling this stuff, don't be afraid to go over it again and again and again. Mm-hmm. So similar to how the glazes work, we're putting on a small area of paint that's kind of translucent. Just drop my paintbrush into my wet palette, which is super useful. Hashtag professional. But we're putting something on that's kind of translucent that allows us to build up more and more and more as we go. The best artists for non-metallic metal, as far as I'm concerned, in the hobby, tend to use stippling to do things. There's a guy on Instagram called Flame On Miniatures, who has, I kid you not, the best non-metallic gold I have ever seen, to the point where your initial reaction is, how has he gold-plated that miniature? It's incredible. And that's all done through stippling. Tiny touches of just dots of paint work together to create this amazing, beautiful effect.
Okay. I'll try that out.
So nice and gentle brush pressure, little dots. And they have a fairly gestalt power. So you'll do a little bit and it'll have more of an effect than the tiny bits of paint that you've done, because it creates that rougher line than a highlight, because it's interspersed, of course, with the base behind it. And it looks more like, especially on something soft and organic like this, it looks more like a real thing than a painted thing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get it. I will see what I can do about that. Eldrazi Winter is in the chat telling us that they're working on some Dark Angels. Eldrazi, are you going for the classic green, or are you going for like the kind of the old school red and black? Let us know how you're painting your Dark Angels, because I've seen a lot more people going for the non-codex scheme for Dark Angels recently.
Like the heresy.
Yeah, like the heresy colors.
Yeah.
I think it's because the lion came out a little bit. He's got a little green on his armor, but he's definitely a little more black than green, I think. And so I think a lot of people have looked at that and been like, "Oh, that also looks pretty good."
It does look sick.
Mm-hmm.
I always like the old Dark Angels chaplains that are predominantly black with a green shoulder pad.
Oh yeah,
really cool color combo and just a great look all around.
Mm-hmm. Fully agreed, man. I know we all not we all. I know that the community likes to complain that there's too many Space Marines. Space Marines are so damn cool. Like there are like 9 chapters that I look at and like, I'd like to paint an army of that. And then like, the logical part of my brain is like, John, you don't want to know how many dollars on Space Marines. Do not do it 4 more times.
I mean, to be fair, dude, you did just tell us how you spent $90 on Space Marines for the orcs. So.
Yeah, well, I still have the Space Marines, so like if I ever need a Helbrecht, he just won't have an orc. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So John's starting the Black Templars army so we can get more orcs.
There you go. I actually went through like literally the entire Space Marine catalog for every single model that has an orc on the base, and I got every single one of them.
How many are there?
I could only find 3 Space Marines with an orc on the base, which is Bayard, Helbrecht, and I think it's Sergeant Jovian or something. It's one of the event orcs.
Yes, it is. Yes, he's got the orc with the chainswords through his neck. Yeah, yeah, I have that many.
I have 2 of that many. Funny enough, I have never built the Space Marine. Yeah. Brilliant. One of them is my Space Marine Canonist is doing a Mr. T on it, or Captain Morgan, I guess. Just planting the foot, chainsword's in there. She's holding up a book and reading from it.
Awesome.
She wants everyone to know how in charge she is, so she stands on an arc. And then my guard officer, my generic guard officer, which is actually it's made out of the new Creed model, but with
Oh yeah.
a bit of conversion work done so that it's not necessarily Creed, but it's actually going to be my field marshal because I converted it up, gave her a gas mask, fit her in with the whole Steel Legion theme.
Nice, dude.
All right.
How are you finding the stippling? Takes some getting used to.
Yep. In the getting used to stage, if I'm being honest, I actually haven't put any on on the model yet because I did it on my thumb for a while.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Just
Good place to start.
Just to get like that first kind of pass out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm about to try it on the model. We'll see how that goes.
Cool. Eldrazi says, I went a dark green/black look, but with gold trim. And I went with darker gold and tan with red and green instead of bone for Deathwing. Haven't painted any Ravenwing yet. That sounds really nice, dude.
Yeah. That sounds
really cool. I did a load
cool.
of Dark Angels with gold trim for a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. Apparently gold in Dark Angels terms is reserved for like only the best of their things. But my buddy Nick won ITC Best in Faction Dark Angels.
So he earned it.
The year we started painting them, so it made sense to have the gold, right?
Well done to him. All right, there we go.
Yeah, I got to play as him quite a lot in the 2019-2020 season. And in the 2020 to 21 season, I had the pleasure of playing a guy called Charlie, who also won Best in Faction Dark Angels that year. And I'm not surprised because his list was something like 40 Terminators, which was just horrendous. I somehow managed to max assassinate into that by just playing around the Terminators as much as I could, but there was no way I was winning that game.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think I know the Charlie you're referring to.
Got to play him at the LBO. It was the only loss I took at the LBO, but goddamn, what a brutal but fun game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Working on the stippling. This is an interesting technique.
So again, try and use the side of the tip of the brush because otherwise, and this, especially if you're using a synthetic brush, anyone watching, synthetic brushes have a really huge tendency to basically curl the tip, so you get this hook to them. And that's because of the way that like the nylon, basically, and everything else that goes into making it reacts and works once you've been using it for a while. For sable brushes, it's a lot more forgiving, but you'll blunt the tip. You end up bending the bristles in, and it with more of a chisel than a brush, which you obviously don't want on an expensive sable brush. So try and aim for using the side of the tip of the brush, but you still want to be using the absolute tip of it. And hopefully you can see here how the stippling is creating a texture on the model.
Yeah, I can see what you're doing.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm conceptually aware of stippling. I made you go through the explanation again because I wanted to hear it. But because I know a lot of people use stippling on like the edges of Tyranid carapaces.
Yeah.
So I've tried it not recently, and kind of am aware of it. But I figured it was just easier to get you to explain it again because
Well, that's what I'm here for.
That's what you're here for, yeah.
And I always find as well, I stream, obviously, a lot. There are people in the chat that, despite the fact that they're not physically like in the room, still I feel get a little bit of that kind of schoolyard nervousness where you never really want to ask the question in class in case somebody else thinks that you've, maybe asked a really dumb question.
Mm-hmm. I will play dumb easily to get a second explanation, 100%. No problem.
That's the right way to do it.
Everyone explains it a little bit differently, and no one explained it to me. I just kind of read a little bit and was like, let's try.
But also, in my experience, there's like it says one guy in chat's like, I don't really get this at all. Can you explain it again? There's 9 other people like, oh, thank God he asked, because I was going to ask, but I was too afraid to, and they all just want to know. So it's never a problem, and sometimes asking a question is helping out a lot more people than just yourself as well. So please don't ever be afraid of that.
Yeah, and from experience, sometimes it helps out the person who is explaining it as well. Because it's very easy.
That's a very good point.
It's very easy when explaining a thing to gloss over the parts that you know that you know. that are easy to you, basically. It's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
And so I never mind when someone, whenever I'm teaching 40K, people are like, all right, can you stop and explain that part? I'm like, right, you do need to know this as well. Hold on, I got you.
Mm-hmm. I guess some of it is information you sort of take for granted that
Mm-hmm.
and you assume that it's kind of this globally known thing. I guess, especially at the higher end of 40K, for your coaching, you probably get a lot of people from various different backgrounds and different strengths of the game.
Absolutely.
What's the thing that you found, not that you take for granted that everyone should know, but the thing that you tend to gloss over the most, that you have to explain to a new person more than somebody else, for instance?
That's a great question. Hold on, give me a second to ponder on that one.
It's okay.
Because I feel like I feel like it's almost always all the different movement tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's very easy for me to be like, all right, I'm going to do this to get out of combat, and then I'm like, wait, I need to explain that piling in doesn't have to go as close as possible. Like, it needs to go just slightly closer and go around. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the best answer. We talk about that a lot on stream. The ways that you can manipulate your movement in close combat is, I feel, what separates a good player to a great player. A good player will maybe win the combat. A great player will win the game because of that combat, and not because he just killed a unit, but because of the way he's manipulated his force on the field to ensure that outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's basically true. That's exactly how I like to do it. That's one of the things that I hope bleeds over to 10th, because I don't think
you and me both.
Any of the Warhammer community articles have really covered the melee yet. So that's one that I'm hoping stays similar.
No, we've seen a few like profiles.
Yeah, we've seen stats,
attacks and stuff, but that's kind of it, I think.
Yeah, but that doesn't actually change much, honestly. In 9th edition, I take the best stats possible. In 10th edition, whatever they change, I will then take the best stats possible, and we'll move on. That's just a little bit of analysis. That's not actually changing how I play. All right. Going back and
I really love combat. It like I said, it's what separates a good player from a great player. I've always played combat armies, which is one of the reasons why I'm moving away from 9th now, because in 9th, I find knights are a shooting army with some combat, whereas in 8th they were a combat army with some shooting. And the ways that you could mess people around with just tiny bits of positioning differences from charges and pile-ins and so on. Incredible. Suddenly you dance 6 inches across in a combat, and you've got an objective that they now can't get to, and they're like, how the hell did you do that? That's legal, and I know it's right, but I didn't see that coming. What have you done?
Yeah, relatable, honestly. I think I spent the first 3 editions that I played the game as exclusively a Tyranid player, and Tyranids were never a particularly shooting army during that stage. So I honestly, I think that was the first part of being a good player that I got down, was all of the little jank in that you can do in combat.
It's definitely jank.
And Tyranids are usually a good army to learn combat jank with.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I tried to win games for a while, was just being a technical, good combat player and just trying to work with the Tyranid codexes of 4th, 5th, 6th that were strong sometimes. And also sometimes not.
Yeah. I had the plastic Tyranid army when it first came out. We talked about that, I think, last time we were together. And I found at the time that whilst you had some good combat options, overall it was an easier codex to play if you just played with as many Devourers as you could possibly fit onto your monsters. Which to me was great and all, but it didn't feel like a Tyranid army. So I do hope we still keep that feeling of the swarm and the sheer ferocity that they have.
Yeah, well, Tyranids right now, current meta, actually seem to play a lot more like old Tyranids did in 8th edition earlier, like in the pre-Crusher days. Just because they finally toned down the book to the point where you no longer are just a successful stat check every time.
That's right.
And you now have to do the rest of it, which I enjoy. Which I do enjoy.
It's going to be a more rewarding feeling when you win, surely.
Yeah, it is, but I do miss spore mines. Just so we're clear.
As someone that's been essentially move blocked by those things many times, they can get in the sea.
Yeah, didn't think you would take too kindly to them.
No. What a knight's really scared of, well, everything. But especially mortal wounds. Okay, cool. I'm going to fire these there. Yeah, I need that objective. This is going to suck.
It's a move, block, and mortal wounds at the same time. What could go wrong?
So let me know how you get on with the stippling now.
Yep,
Dude.
I've already made it a little bit lighter. Made it a little more ochre than brown at this point. Cool. And I'm going back and doing another layer of stippling and adding a decent amount of texture to it. I don't know if the texture's really showing on that camera, but I'm working on it.
We'll see it soon enough, I'm sure. One of the things to remember about stippling, let me grab some shot glasses. I'll be back in a sec. Not for drinking.
Of course.
Demonstration purposes only.
Curious to see that? Yeah, so just holding that up, just kind of showing off the leather there. Already looking pretty good. I like the warm leather.
Good.
Prior to this, I often find that I do my leathers with a little more purple than orange. Or I guess than the ochre.
Mm-hmm.
So this is looking a little bit different than my normal ones, but not necessarily in a bad way. So I'm excited for this.
Cool. Well, that can work. Purple works as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So imagine this this grid of shot glasses I've got here is your brushstrokes, your stippling. Right.
Okay.
So you do a load of evenly spaced dots all over your mini, and like, okay, so we've stippled in that area, and oh look, we've got texture.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But as you can see, these are translucent. You can see through to my board underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see some of the brown on the model with some of the lighter color you're putting on now. Then you go back and you start putting in more stipples in those areas, and you create a thicker highlight pass on one area of it. You still see through to this section, but this section is a lot more hard to see through to the cutting board, and that's your second pass. Then you do a little bit more of that, and you start building those highlights a little more in that area, and you end up with something that's very opaque here, but you've got this nice smooth gradient going through it because you can see all the way through there, most of the way through here, kind of through here, and you can't really see it all through there, and you keep going with stippling like that until you end up with something that is actually opaque in one area, and it gives you a really easy way of building gradients across a plane that doesn't take too long, but it's an easy enough process once you get the manual, like the technique down, essentially. So that's stippling. That's how it works.
Watching you put all the cups away is now the fun part for me. You're doing great. There you go. Let's start clapping while it goes.
What's her face? Somebody Kendrick. Need her in there doing the cup.
Anna Kendrick, I think.
Anna Kendrick.
Yeah, I know there's a cup. There's a whole song about this.
That's right.
There we go. Okay. I like what I'm seeing.
Hopefully that helps you out. But take your time getting the stippling right. This is what sort of, again, like the step we did before, this helps set up everything that we're about to do. Because all we've done at the moment is the highlights on all of these. Yep. What we haven't done yet is any of the little strikes, the scrapes, the cuts, and so on that would be roughing up the surface. We've just created a rougher surface with that as a highlight pattern. Other things that's really, really good on, cloth. I've got a model I can show you to help out with that, actually.
Ooh, okay. It's always fun watching Jay step off stream like this. He's going to come back with a Golden Demon Terminator Librarian and say, this is something that's been sitting underneath my pillow for the last 7 months.
These, I promise, weren't in a drawer because one of them is a commission for a client, and the other one was the test model for an Eldar army I literally just never got around to. But this is a model I painted for a potential Eldar army I was going to do. I did 2 of them in a weekend and in different color schemes and gave the other one away because I preferred this more. But you can see, like right down here at the bottom, maybe just about, and some around the knee here. Let me zoom in right up close. Hopefully it's coming across well. But you can see there's those tiny, tiny, tiny little dots. Right? It's more pronounced here. But all of this area is just tiny, tiny dots, one after another, after another, after another, building up layers, building up thicknesses, building up opacity. And what that does is it simulates the effect of fibers in cloth. Now, this mini is, I'll call it 1.5 inches tall. You can't see the fibers in my shirt in real size, you know? So doing it on a model and making it really like big, thick, chunky highlights for it isn't going to work. It's the wrong scale. But something really, really fine, you can see just at the bottom of here in the blue, gives the feeling of something that has a texture to it, that gives it a feeling of something that isn't entirely smooth. And that's one of the best uses of stippling. It's just a little here and there to help carry out the effect of something that is not just a plastic toy soldier. This is made of cloth, it's made of leather, it's made of stone, because stone is a great place to use stippling on. To really create a stone texture.
Add
a
it
lot
to
of
the
people
list.
like to dry brush stone.
You know, I have a lot of tactical rocks in my Imperium armies, so now I got to learn this too.
I'm currently painting Custodian for somebody. They wanted me to paint it after Overwatch, I think was the game. There's some dude in it wears stone armor, so we're painting Trajan in stone. And one of the ways we will create a look that looks like stone on this is, as well as using the right colors, we'll just stipple all of the highlights in to create that rocky texture for it. So stippling, very useful, but usually only certain things. You could stipple all of the armor if you wanted to and take forever doing that. You'd get beautiful gradients, bounce reflections, all of these things. But it would just take a little longer than doing it with the airbrush in this case, or wet blending in this case. So
okay. I still think I want to learn that though, because it sounds like, at least for like, again, the classic tactical rock, I don't like using the airbrush on too small of details, and like basing is just one of those things where I do basing after the model's done, and once I've painted the foot, I don't want to airbrush the rock it's planted on.
Why's that?
Because I assume that I'm going to miss.
Okay. So
based on hard-earned experience.
All of the base on this guy, with the exception of the small edge highlights that we've obviously applied, was airbrushed. And all of that was airbrushed after the model was complete.
Well, you're crazy.
Well, I didn't airbrush the skull actually either, I guess. Am I crazy? No, I've just had lots of practice. And it's entirely possible to do that with an airbrush, and I can definitely teach you how to do this. It does take practice. Obviously, it takes time to learn the mechanical motion, and you know, it's like driving a car. You've got to be able to control the vehicle. In this case, you've got to be able to control the airbrush in a safe and controlled manner to ensure you don't make a mistake that's going to ruin something. But I like to airbrush my bases because I think it gives a much better effect than dry brushing. I'm very much anti-dry brushing, as most of chat also knows.
What could be better than dry brushing?
I mean, listen, I might control the matrix, but that's but yeah, when we get around to doing airbrush lessons, we can definitely look at doing stuff like that. Okay.
I want to see it. I like it.
Anyway, how's your stippling coming along?
Stippling's coming along great, I think. Yeah. It's the top is like where I want to do it most, and unfortunately, the way that my model happens to be posed, the top is basically wedged under his elbow. So I've been focusing more on the upper edge along the side, where, you know, realistically, if he's jamming a pistol in the holster in combat, he might miss it on the first try. Reason that there's going to be a lot more wear towards the top than the bottom, so I've been focusing on that, and then along the back edge.
Cool. Okay. When you're happy with that, we'll move on to adding a little bit of damage. Now, we've done wear and tear.
Okay.
Then it'll be damage. So let me know when you're ready, and we'll move on.
I'm ready right now.
Oh, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go then. So with the same color but less thin this time, because we're going to create more of an edge highlight consistency to things rather than that slightly thinner stippling consistency. We just go back to adding in some strikes. Now there's some do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
Don't paint little X's on stuff because it just looks weird.
Yep.
I don't know why people do it, but it
I
does
do
look
see
weird.
the X's a lot.
Look for anywhere that would be exposed and could have been rubbed against something. Maybe had somebody, like he's fighting a cultist or whatever, and they pull a knife and they go for it, and he moves and they hit his holster instead. And make some reasonably deliberate brush strokes in this. And you can start them at the edges, you can start them in the middle, it doesn't matter. But just do, say, a dozen, 15 or so on the holster, and then one or two here and there on the smaller things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget they have sides as well as the main facing, and what you can do, of course, is put a strike on one that you follow through onto the other side, so as if it's dragged around the whole thing. There's something else that you can do with this as well, is stagger it. So if I put one in here coming from this side, so we put in a nice line, and then I'm going to put in just a more pronounced dot. So like the stippling that we've done, but a very definitely pronounced dot rather than a tiny stipple for texture.
Mm-hmm.
And those little lines and dots and things like that all add up to create little bits of quasi-realistic damage, because those dots could be several impact points where something's hit it rather than scraped alongside it. As always, things like corners, you expect to get more wear and more damage because they'll bang into things. They protrude a little.
All
so
true.
Hit those areas too.
Okay. Just wearing it down. Alright, just adding nice thin lines. This is the part where we're both holding our breath.
No, not at all. This bit's reasonably straightforward, because as long as you don't paint a line too thick, you can't really go wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, this is one of the best things. If you're someone that has shaky hands, I know it's a fairly common thing in what we do. I get asked about advice for it a lot. Things like stippling, you're already a level up, you know. But these little bits of wear and tear and damage can be used to disguise a lot of less than perfect blends and things like that. So if you're someone that has a difficulty with like smooth edge highlights
Mm-hmm.
and smooth gradients across a surface and so on, doing things like that to break that up and disguise it, it's a little bit like sleight of hand magic, you know, where the magician's trying to get you to spot the queen in the 3 cards and stuff. You've got a thing that you're doing, which is drawing the eye away from that and making it look where you want them to look. So you don't have to be super accurate with this. The lines don't need to be nice and straight and things.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're thin, that's the main thing.
All right, about 10 to 15 lines, you said?
Yeah, something like that. If you think, oh god, that's a lot, it's suddenly all this colour, you've gone too far. So, add a little bit at a time. You can see here we've got lots of these little scratches now. It's breaking up the surface. We've still got those stippled bits of highlight from the wear and tear, but now we've got little bits of actual damage where something is, obviously from the outside, significantly interacted with it and caused an issue on the surface.
Okay. Just clean my brush back off.
A question for the people in chat: Have any of you done much in the way of painting battle damage, or are you someone that does more parade ground finish to models? What's your given style?
Yeah. While we're waiting on them to catch up, I'll freely admit I am much more of a parade ground, just because it's a little bit easier. So I haven't really learned much of weathering or battle damage, because again, my first army was Tyrannid, so it was all organic, and I didn't have to learn how to weather metal or armor at all. Now I could have learned how to, do organic battle damage, but I didn't. I was more worried about how quickly I could get a model on the tabletop than how it looked while it was there.
Oh, I understand that. I think for a lot of people that get into the game for the game,
Mm-hmm.
or at least initially, that's the thing. Like, I need to get these on the table.
Yeah.
I want to play them, especially in modern 40k, where if you don't have that, you're not playing for the full amount of points and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely started out playing for the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most people do. Like everything's cool, the experience is cool, the game is cool, the fighting, the battle and stuff is cool. And I think as soon as you start playing the game, it gets its hooks in you. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, come on, play more.
Oh, I am fully hooked. No getting out of
Just
it now.
one little taste.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
Bang Don't People says also parade ready for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get that. Would you ever take, say, 2 minutes for every model you've ever painted to do a little bit more to take them from parade ground to I'm actually really, really happy and really impressed with these minis because they've got more personality and so on?
Oh, if I thought I could do that in 2 minutes, I 100% would.
Okay.
Which I know it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible for future John can do it in 2 minutes.
Future John. That's it.
Future John could do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Jason Trump says, my army being blood angels, my vampires care to keep their armor clean and fresh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your minis, then, I assume, are pre-battle.
Yeah.
Rather than in a battle, then.
I think it'd be kind of fun to have like some pristine blood angels and then have the Death Company just completely deranged.
Oh, yeah.
That would be kind of fun.
They've seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Moon, hello, my dude.
Moon Tyrannid, hello, hello. Alright, so added all the lines.
Cool. Okay, good. How are you feeling about it? Does it look like it's worn leather?
Yeah, definitely looking nice and worn here.
Excellent. Right, one last thing then. We're going to use pretty much pure the ochre colour. So mine is the Bogan Brown, and mix it in with a little of our last thing, just to help get the blend a little smoother. I always like to do that to take some of the previous colour and mix it in with what we're about to use, so it just has a little less separation from it. And then we just add in those final bits of wear. So here I'm going to concentrate predominantly on the corners. And you'll see this really just jump out from the model once it's had a little bit of work on it. I'm still using a stippling method, but imagine this is the final edge highlight on something, a little specular highlight, we call it, the little dots rather than the line. We just happen to be doing, say, 10 dots instead of 1 dot, but they're all really small and really close together. 2 minutes for pro, 20 minutes for us normies.
That is how it feels, but you know, we can, if I practice it, I'm pretty sure I can close the gap.
Yeah, like the difference between, instead of normies, let's say a less experienced painter to a pro painter, I think is a lot less of a gap than people think. So, John, you would probably describe yourself, I imagine, as an average painter.
I do. I've actually conceded that I am like 51st percentile at this point. Like I'm very slightly above average is how I now call myself. Very slightly.
I think you're underselling yourself, to be fair, which is why I started off the conversation that way. But if 2 months ago I said, I'll have you wet blending inside 20 minutes, I'm probably sure would be like, well, we'll give it a go, but I'm very cautiously optimistic at best.
Yeah. Good old college try is definitely what I would have said.
Okay, cool. And then with a tiny bit of guidance and a little bit of tweaking to your technique, wet blending. Yeah? Bang, done, easy. And I imagine that if I said, I'll get you painting non-metallic metal inside about half an hour, you probably would have thought that would be impossible at the first start, right?
Unlikely. I'm not a big impossible guy, but
Good.
Yeah.
No one should be an impossible guy. Excellent. So the difference between someone that's inexperienced and someone that does it a lot and is practiced and not necessarily has mastered it, because I haven't mastered non-metallic metal, but has had more of that time using it, isn't actually as big as people think. I think you could probably, within an hour, with a teacher, admittedly, that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Or with somebody to offer you feedback, you can improve drastically in a very, very short amount of time, because you've got that guidance. So whilst it might be at the moment 2 minutes for me to make a model look more in keeping with the scene, and 20 minutes for somebody else, once you've done that 20 minutes once or twice,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be 10 minutes. If you've got that in 10 minutes once or twice, it'll be 5 minutes, and so on. You see how that's going to quickly break down into, well, it just takes a couple of minutes, no real effort.
Yeah, just going to keep compounding. That's what I want to see. Okay.
So I've done those little bits of edge highlighting. I'm now just going to add in 1 or 2 more strikes of battle damage. So we've now got 3 depths, essentially, of damage. You've got the stuff we've just put on, the stuff before that, and the stuff way before we did the stippling.
Mm-hmm.
There was that little background to everything.
All right. Let me just...
And there you go. That's how to paint nice, fairly realistic leather.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken our time over that, because obviously I had to learn the technique, but
Mm-hmm. A fair share of conversing in the middle as well, of course.
Yeah. A couple of minutes work, done.
All right. I like it. Let me just...
The only time I accept something as impossible is when they're referring to a veg burger. Nice. I like it.
Have yet to find a way to fly on my own power. Don't think of it as flying on your own power. Think of it as flying, and it is very okay to use a tool.
Yeah. Using, I'm not finger painting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Christ, could you imagine me trying to stipple with these? Like, ham-handed. No,
it would look great.
Not.
It would look fantastic, Jay. You'd find a way.
There's a painter called Roman LaPlatte,
mm-hmm.
who is one of the more famous artist painters, painterly painters, who did finger paint a miniature. And to be fair, he did a really, really good job of it. And in his eyes, he just went, listen, I just wanted to experience the joy of being like a 4-year-old painting again. And so I thought, why not? I'll just finger paint something. Fair play.
I was about to suggest actually that you do an April 1st stream where you
finger paint.
Yeah, you get just a generic intercessor, just unprimed, and you just see what you can do.
What I can finger paint. I have a feeling that doing glowing eyes on that with fingers is going to be a little tricky.
Well, you just need a real gnarly hangnail, and somehow it all works.
Oh, I see. Now we're hacking finger painting.
Now we're hacking finger painting. Yeah. It's not impossible.
FAQ
you shouldn't have said it was impossible, Jay. Yeah. The secret is to be weird. All right. Just adding a little bit more here on that battle damage. Just trying to make a couple of them a little more pronounced in the middle. All right. Well, I like the way it looks. Let me see if I can hold this up. Good. Oh, wow. Completely missed the camera.
That's all right, dude. I spent the entire weekend, I think, with my head in front of it, trying to get paint on this Thunderhawk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Relatable. Alrighty. Well, some nice leather stuff there.
Excellent. All right, then, man. So the next thing is doing some more soft areas, but this is going to be the body glove underneath our space ring.
Yep.
So I think on our last lesson, we painted all these bits black. I can see on mine what looks like some definite highlights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We might have already done a first highlight on these.
Yeah, we've done at least one. I think I've done 2 highlights on this, just kind of eyeballing it.
Awesome.
It looks like it, started black, and I've done 2 different highlights on it.
Cool. I'm just going to grab some Administratum Grey. So this is GW's kind of neutral, light grey that they do. I love this. I use it in so many things.
Yeah, that's Administratum Grey?
Administratum Grey.
Yeah, I've got Uniform Grey here from Army Painter, which off of memory is very slightly darker than that, but you can still see this is quite a mid grey. But I've got plenty of white and black here to just mix it up just a little bit.
That's all good, man. That'll do just fine. So why don't you take a little of that, and then what we want to do is, in a similar way to how we've just done those brush strokes with the stippling, we're basically put tiny dots in, specular highlights.
Mm-hmm.
So on the back of this guy, you can see on the foot on the leg where we put the brighter highlight here. What we want to do is now follow that highlight up to the small soft area and put a little dot of this grey in a nice line down to that. Okay?
All right.
And that just helps to bring out the natural shape of the leg with a final highlight. I like to imagine that the body glove or whatever it is that this actually is reasonably well lubricated to enable like good range of motion and so on. So I think it should always be a little bit shiny, but still quite dark. So these tiny highlights just help to enhance the shine a little bit. And then, once we've done those all over, we've actually got plenty of time left in the session, which is great. So what would you like to do then? We've got browns on the pad. We could look at doing some battle damage on our dude, or we could perhaps start painting the face. Up to you.
Looking at this fine gentleman that I've got in front of me. Face, battle damage, plasma coils, and purity seals are the things that I look at as like, yep, I want to make sure I know how to do this. As well, painting white, because his helmet is currently still primer.
Oh yeah, we're doing white helmets, aren't we?
So we'll be doing white at some point as well. But of those,
I could paint.
yeah, of those, I would imagine that either the purity seal or the battle damage would be the, and I'll kind of defer to you on time-wise what you think works here, because I imagine that faces is a whole episode's worth of stuff. But
pretty much, yeah. Because there's loads of ways of doing a face, from like 5 minutes worth of work of I've laid down some contrast paint, and then I've done a couple of quick highlights. And
I can do a face in 5 minutes.
Done. All the way to we've painted the mini with red, blue, and yellow because Jay said this was the right thing to do, and now his face looks weird. To wow, how do we end up with a face like that?
Mm-hmm. Finger paint in red, blue, and yellow, obviously.
Yeah, just a quick swipe with a little finger I find works absolutely like on the money.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, Jay? What would you rather do here? Would you rather do a stream where you had to paint an intercessor with finger paints, or would you rather paint an intercessor where you only had red, blue, and yellow on your palette?
Red, blue, and yellow.
Okay, that means that I'd rather see the finger painting.
And yellow.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
because I think you can do more with that set of primary. That sounds like a good challenge stream for us, John. You know.
Yeah, both of those sound like interesting. And like, to be clear, I wouldn't let you go red, blue, and yellow and then paint like a howling griffin. You know, like I would be like, no.
There's
You're
red. There's yellow.
There's the yellow.
Cool.
Yeah, like
Now I've got orange I can make for recesses on that, and I've got purple I can make for recesses on that. Actually, not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to see that, chat? Would you like to see once John sort of got through the lessons and we've mastered some techniques, like see something that John could maybe do in a longer stream as a bit of a challenge? See what he's learned.
Oh God.
Hey, you brought this up, dude. This is on you.
I'd rather do the finger painting.
You'd rather do the finger painting, yeah? It's less flame in that, right?
Yeah. No one's going to judge me on how that model looks. I can only get compliments for that one.
Hey, you used 3 colors, man. You came up with a masterpiece. Like, that's the way to think about it, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that you need to go up to the paint judge and be like, this is 3 colors. Sir, that is clearly 21. It's like, no.
Yeah, hey, this is my 3 color minimum. I used exactly these 3. I'm like, yes, but it looks like.
It's quite the flex. All right.
Let's see. For stuff that you've got on your mini, let's just do purity seals, because you've got some purity seals on the mini.
I do, yeah.
And I've got one here that we can paint a purity seal on. It's reasonably quick. It's reasonably straightforward.
Nice.
And then the next time we paint together, we could do faces. I reckon that's a good shout.
Okay, I like it.
Cool. So, purity seals, parchment. As usual, here's one I prepared earlier. Parchment.
Oh, just had that guy laying around, huh?
I literally did on the side. We're going to finish his base tomorrow night on stream. We're doing like exploding lava off of his base. If anyone plays the card game, it's a phone game, Marvel Snap. This was entirely taken as a color scheme from the Venomized Killmonger card, which will mean nothing to anyone who doesn't. But if you do, you'll get it. Parchment. Parchment is actually super simple, but there's ways of doing parchment that make parchment look kind of greasy and oily and shiny, which are the bad ways, and there are ways of doing parchment that make parchment look like paper, which are the good ways. This looks somewhere close to the second version for a quick job. It does the job. The normal thing that makes parchment look like it's lived in a fish and chip shop all its life is when people wash parchment. They'll normally take something like Agrax or Reichland Flesh Shade or whatever other wash you're using. I personally absolutely love the Army Painter washes. And so I know John has these. Mid-brown is a brilliant wash for parchment. The thing you need to do with any wash, though, is absolutely shake the hell out of it. Because if you don't, the medium in these, which is designed to help the pigment flow into the recesses, has to be ever so slightly glossy. And you need a really good combination of everything in there, a really homogeneous solution, essentially. For base coats for parchment, I found one of the easiest ways to do it if you're going over black is with Steel Legion Drab. It'll take a couple of coats, but it works. It gets the job done, and we can move on into a bone color from that. So if you've got some sort of neutral mid-brown, off you go with that. I'm then going to use 2 paints from P3 that I probably use on almost every single model that I paint. P3, instead of having triads, has pairs. So they have a base and a highlight color for that base. This is their Menoth White base and highlight. And as you can see, we've got like a bone color and a really light bone color. I think the GW version of this, Wraithbone, sits somewhere just brighter than that. I don't think they have a bone as good as and as bright as that. So I don't really know what to suggest for GW colors, but hopefully for Army Painter, you've got something that you can put together for these two.
I think I can. I've got a nice leather brown that I'll use kind of as that Steel Legion Drab.
That's this one? Yeah.
Yep. I think that looks about right.
Okay.
It certainly looks like it'll be sufficient. And then I think I can I'll probably as soon as I put that down, I'll go grab a couple different bone colors because I've got 3 or 4 in a box and I know where they are.
Nice.
So I can go get those.
I know they had, I want to say it was like skeleton bone or jack bone or something like that, I think.
Yeah, skeleton bone is
close to this.
Skeleton bone is that one I was looking at for the middle one, and then I think I've got I believe it's it's mummy robe or brain matter beige. I was gonna grab both honestly and compare and see because one of them is a very lighter tan. I think it's brain matter beige.
Excellent. Go for it. Grab those, and we'll paint a purity seal.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just toss this leathered brown down real quick. Screaming Skull and Ushapti Bone might work out for those of you using Citadel paints. Those sound like those are the right ones.
Screaming Skull could be, yeah.
I'd have to look at it again. I haven't used that in a while. I remember that I used to use it a lot before I jumped over to mostly Army Painter. All right.
Just looking to see if I've got a better purity seal to paint. Something a little easier to do more fun things on. What's that guy? Random Sigma dude at the back of my cabinet. No, it's all pre-modded detail. No one wants that.
Yeah, so one of the things that throws me is all the Sigmar purity seals all have the script worked into it.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed.
I get it because it's a game aimed at 12-year-olds, so you got to make it easy. And here comes the flame from the chat for that.
I don't know if you're digging Stormcast or Age of Sigmar, but I'm okay with it either way.
Say that again.
I don't know if you're throwing shade at Stormcast or at Sigmar in general.
Oh, mostly to Sigma.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah. Double turn. Boop, boop. Alrighty.
bigger purity seal. I don't really have one.
Okay, just got that base down, so I'm going to step off camera for the briefest of moments to go get some of those paints.
No worries. I will do my best to keep chat entertained.
Oh, I have full faith in you.
We'll do some
Full confidence.
interpretive dance and some Mongolian throat singing. And if there's anybody left when you come back, they're your real fans. That's all I've got to say. So what are you working on, chat? What have you been up to? How is your weekend as well? What hobby projects have you got ongoing? I painted the... Well, actually, here's a purity seal, to be fair. Let me zoom this out. Over the weekend, I painted this absolute beast. We've put about 32 hours or so into the painting of this. And it's large and heavy and not particularly easy to maneuver. It's also still in sub-assemblies. We just put it together so we can take some photos because I love it. But if we disassemble it just a little, I'm going to show you a purity seal. No, we'll have to take the wings off as well. I can wholeheartedly say that this is a lot of fun to paint. I think you said yes that you can't do ongoing throat singing. I was going to give it my best try, put it that way, and then we'd find out if people were actually able to stay through it. But if we pop that apart, here's a purity seal that I started working on yesterday. I've got another one of these to do this side. Mm-hmm. And this is those colours, that steel Elysian drab in the middle with a little bit of Rhinox hide just to help darken it down a touch and to outline it nicely. And then just Mouth White base, that the darker of the two bone colours built up around it. And for me, the things that help sell it a little bit as that parchment colour is I just use a little of that steel Elysian drab just glazed over the surfaces. So you see how it looks different with the bone over the brown. So there's a brown over the bone. I'm going to use both of those techniques to paint some purity seals. No. We've got some script on there. I think this one's going to be the name of the gunship, which was Oathbound Fury. So I'm going to fit that into there somehow.
It's a very dramatic name. I'm going to have to go back and watch that full explanation. So I grabbed, holding the one with the camera for you, grabbed a couple different light shades of beige and bone. So I think I am set on that.
All right. It's going to take about a minute for me to see that. So let's just shoot.
That's why I did it now. Mm-hmm.
And we'll base with that.
Perfect. So
Jonathan DeLeo says, working on my Thousand Suns. Nice. Have you gone like the traditional blue and gold and everything, or something else?
Yeah, the red and gold is always a classic, good-looking army.
Yes, I did I think it's the one that you guys actually keep looking at and going, oh, World Eaters, because he's red and gold. But I actually painted as a Thousand Sun from Heresy.
Oh, that's funny.
It is a bit, yeah, because they couldn't be too far apart, really. I will have some World Eaters for you guys to use in your thumbnail soon, hopefully. I put together a load of 8-bound, an Exalted 8-bound last Wednesday. I really want to get my World Eaters good and done. Mm-hmm. So, Steel Elysian drab all over your purity seal. I finally got the camera through. That looks pretty spot on, actually, mate. Yeah, I like those. What were they for your eye paint? You said skeleton bone and...
Brain matter beige.
Brain matter beige. What a name.
I know, right? Yeah, that's my go-to for like the lightest possible bone, like just barely not white, but still distinctly not white.
Off whites and things like that are definitely the right way to go for almost any paint. We're talking about like what would use to make things warmer and so on. That's frequently one of the better ways to highlight something you want to retain warmth with, is by adding bone colours once you get to a point where it needs to be made even brighter than it is. Because it doesn't take away too much from the colour itself. It doesn't go too pastel. It retains that warmth.
Nice.
Metallic purple with gold trim. Dude, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
The flames are a metallic green with a water lightning wash that pops out. Metallic green flames. That sounds really interesting.
Metallic flames. I like it. It's a cool concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's magical fire, right? So why not go for it?
I'm shaking all my paints as far away from the mic as possible so that people don't have to hear the sloshing. That's why I'm like half on the camera right now. Though, oh, absolutely. That's all that matters.
I promise there's a protein shake I've shaken off stream.
Yep. The shake weight. It's classic. I remember when those came out.
See, I don't remember the shake weight itself, but I remember the South Park episode about it so well. Did you watch the South Park Warhammer episode yet?
I have not. I've watched like a 60-second clip that popped across my YouTube or my Facebook or my YouTube. I haven't watched the show itself very frequently, but I was told about it, and then it popped up like 10 times, and then like the final time I was like, all right, let me just see what this actually is. It's pretty funny.
I thought it was good. I love South Park though. I am absolutely a child when it comes to all that sort of stuff. So
fair enough. Nothing wrong with that. All right, so
it's good that dry, but nice mid brown to begin with.
Yeah, I did my nice mid brown right before I went to find my paint, so mine's already dry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's cunning but brutal over here.
Okay, so paper.
Mm-hmm.
If you crumple up paper, the shadows aren't too far away from the highlights. And so once we've painted this, we kind of want a similar thing where it's not a big difference, but because of the scale, we need to exaggerate it ever so slightly. So we'll need to bring in the highlights and move on and create a nice bright bit of paper. But we don't want the recess to be super, super, super dark. We just need it to be a little bit more exaggerated. So I'm going to take some of our mid-bone, which I've already got on my palette from yesterday. I'm going to mix that into our Steel Legion drab. So earlier on I was saying how when I'm painting something, I want to try and use some of the previous color with my next color to create a smoother blend. This is definitely one of those things where it's definitely true to do that.
Okay.
So I'm going about 50-50 or so. And I'm going to paint literally every single part of this, aside from the deepest recesses. Now, on this purity seal, it's split into two. You see there's one at the back here, and then this main one at the front.
Yeah.
The line that separates the two, we do need to be slightly more exaggerated, otherwise you just don't see the fact that there's a difference between them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm using a metal and alchemy series for the metallics, emerald alchemy color for the flame specifically. I love scale metallics. I honestly don't think there are better, specifically gold, metallic pigments made by a miniature company's line of paints than those. They're just beautiful. They apply like a dream. They're so good to work with, and they have the most incredibly powerful colors. The gold on this started off life as dwarven gold from that line, and it's gone through a lot of processes obviously to get it to where it is here, but it's such a great paint line.
Good to know. All right.
When it comes to metallics, I basically use two companies, and that's kind of it. One is Vallejo, which I use for pretty much every metallic silver bar one. So all the way from, they have a metallic black that's a really super dark charcoal, basically. And that Thunderhawk, the base coat on all the silver was metallic black. And then the final highlight I used in it was from Scale, and it's called Speed Metal, and it's a pale silver that is kind of an extremely bright chrome. There's a tiny tint of blue to it.
Oh, that's nice.
It's perfect. That is between that and the metallic black. That's the secret, I think, of true metallic metal silver, basically grey.
Yeah, the silver with a touch of blue in it sounds lovely. That sounds like that'd be just awesome on like a Grey Knight army or in a lot of places, frankly.
Well, that Thunderhawk, because we did all the blue, here's what the metal looked like at the end. It doesn't have any blue in it because we washed it with a brown oil wash. And so it gives everything this really warm, used, weathered appearance to it. but you can lean into, like for Grey Knight specifically, perhaps more blue tones in the washes and things to give you that extra pop of Grey Knight-esque armor, and you can really make the chrome kind of effects of it stand out a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, seriously, just every time I look at the metal on that Thunderhawk, I'm like, all right, as soon as the stream ends, I'm grabbing a Lehman Russ and I'm tying Jane to a chair. He's going to teach me everything. Unfortunately, that's a lot of flight miles for me, so I won't actually be tying Jane to a chair, but I'm going to ask him really nicely.
I mean, I'm just disappointed now, and so are the chat, but, you know, the only Mohawk stream that ends up going on is going to pop off.
All right. Okay.
No, send me a link, and I'll give you my oil guide after the stream, man.
That's what I want. One of those techniques. I've had a couple in mind when we started this, and I'm like, all right, I gotta learn to walk before I can learn to fly. But it's oil washes is one of those things where I'm just waiting for it. Chevrons was another one that made me happy. I like chevrons a lot. I like just adding chevrons to every possible human model that I can. Honestly, like anything that's not just like, and honestly, even orcs you can get away with it. I just don't happen to paint very many orcs.
You definitely can, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like Tyranids and like Dark Eldar are like the only armies that I would never add chevrons to.
No, I painted a.
Oh, Tyranid, that's right. We had this last time. The
Patriarch.
The Patriarch who was definitely in the Bumblebee.
As a striped Nid, because it looks like a wasp.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
And an army like that, I'd love to. I'm so trying hard not to, for 10th, fall into the trap of just buying a Tyranid army for the sake of it.
I will. I'll give you free.
If
you buy a Tyranid army, you'll get free coaching. Let's put it that way.
And sold.
Bang! Got it.
Damn, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. Yes, we were talking very briefly off stream, but the new Tyranid Flying Prime.
Yes.
Oh, God, he looks so cool. Do you think Shrikes would ever return?
100%. I am fully convinced, as a person who does not actually know. Let me emphasize that. Could be. I'm fully convinced that Shrikes are coming back. They've got to be. There's no way they're going to give me a Flying Warrior Prime and not Flying Warriors. Because, I mean, one, the Flying Warrior, he needs to join a unit.
Yes.
He's a leader.
Yes.
You're going to put him in Gargoyles? You're going to put him in Walking Warriors? Like, what are we talking about here? No.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective. Yes, because, of course, now characters joining units. Yeah.
They've got to. I won't
Did Shrikes ever have a model? I think they might have had a metal mini.
They had a Forge World upgrade pack where you could.
That was it.
It was metal. It was a resin wings that slotted into the normal warrior torso.
Yeah. Bring back Shrikes. Let's go, boys.
It would make me extremely happy. I loved Shrikes. Like even when they retired the model, even when they were like an index only, I ran Shrikes for far longer than was smart or meta because I loved Shrikes.
I like how you qualified the two.
Yeah. I didn't want to just say like, oh yeah, I ran them when they weren't meta. I'm like, I ran them when it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like let me just.
When I was actively being discouraged from running these, I was still doing
it. Yeah. When do the Space Marine get update jump packs then? Honestly, it's got to be soon. We'll see. Hopefully Warhammer Fest is showing us a bunch of previews.
Primaris jump packs, man.
Yeah.
And specifically, you mean Primaris jump pack close combat Marines?
Right? No, they're gonna have two hand flamers. Like, God, give me a chain sword or a power sword and a jump pack in the same model. I want a blade guard with a jump pack and like a hand flamer. Instead of just drop the shield, give him a jump pack and a hand flamer. Done.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah, and give me the. This is what I really want. I don't even care. I'm never going to play a Space Marine army myself. Not really.
Other than the Thunderhawk.
But what I do want is the Space Marine video game character Primaris
Mm-hmm.
with a Thunder Hammer.
Thunderhammer.
Jetpack.
Yeah.
just want
When is that game coming out? I'm literally going to buy a
No
PlayStation 5
idea.
when that game comes out.
I know Moon Tyranid in the chat will probably know a rough date for it because he's
He's on top of these
he's that
things.
guy. But don't bully sisters about their jump pack and hand flamer.
I think Zephyr should be able to buy hand flamers.
Yeah.
Like, they're in the kit. Like, what are we talking about here?
By the way, when you've got that coat down, then go on with a coat of pretty much pure, like your mid-tone bone color. Just again, mix a little of your previous color into it to help smooth the blend out a little bit, but mostly the bone. And again, paint everything apart from the recesses. But like on mine, you can see there's a few creases where it goes away from the light. So like just here. For this, I do I might as well show you rather than tell you. But we do a little bit of paint. That's too thick. There'll be a little bit of paint that comes in here at the top, a little bit that comes in here at the bottom, and then we paint this top curve and not the bottom part of it. So we're kind of outlining that section.
Let's see what you're going for.
Leaving that a little darker, you see?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So it's all about balancing the light. Again, we don't want a huge difference between our darkest area and our lightest area. Otherwise, it starts to look really weird.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm mostly leaving that crease in between the front and the back purity seal. Trying to leave that as intact and dark as possible.
Yeah, I just want to paint the guy from Space Marine. I can't remember his name.
Titus?
But Titus, that was it, thank you. I kept thinking Ventress, and like, no, that's the Ultramarine guy from the other series of books. But yeah, just him with a Primaris Thunderhammer jump pack combo would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd be fully in favor of that. Yeah, I'm just so excited for like a video game with what looks to be proper Tyranids and also like new Space Marines. Like that's as cool as could be. That's what I want to do. Just want to rumble, because I acknowledge that I'm probably not going to be able to play as a Tyranid in this game, and I'm not getting my hopes up. But
you don't think you can do a Halo 2 style Covenant gameplay?
I would really like it if they have like an add-on mission where you can just play as Tyranids. But we'll see. Honestly, what they should do is if you're doing multiplayer, one player's playing a first-person shooter as a Space Marine, the other one's playing a real-time strategy game as the Tyranids.
Oh god, that would be brilliant.
Yeah. See, now that I said that, you like the idea, don't you?
Oh,
yeah.
I'd love that. Like one guy is basically, from your perspective as a Tyranid player, doing the most impressive micro in the world, and you're just macroing it up. Yes, that'd be sick. That'd be sick.
Yeah, it's like when Richard beats me with like 2 Reapers in StarCraft. Solos my whole army. I'm like, sweet.
Right, so
this is a thing that has happened.
You know, Rich is not the nice guy that everyone thinks he is, right? When I did those one-time characters for him, I told him how I used to play StarCraft 2, and I did commentary for esports for NLG and a few other bits and pieces. And he was like, "Oh, great, you play StarCraft. We should do a StarCraft exhibition game." Like, mate, I'm not good. He's like, "Yeah, I was high diamond." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not good." Like, no, it'd be really, really fun. Like, you're going to embarrass me so hard on air. No.
That's what he's looking for. He knows what he's doing. No accidents detected.
I'm way too old to be able to play that game quickly anymore. My reaction speed is down the toilet. So.
Yeah, Richard's like, I'm really rusty. I'm probably only like a high platinum at the moment. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I don't know. I hit gold once for about an hour.
I was gold through like the early days of StarCraft, and I managed to get to platinum, and I was consistently failing to get into diamond. But I mean, it would take me a month to get back to a point where I was luckily winning a few games to get my placement matches, and then straight back down again. It was not good. Should have said we can do co-op on stream. I think I'd still get quite comprehensively embarrassed. I was like, right, I've got my second expansion. Cool. What are you doing? Oh, I just won.
Oops.
It's only been 5 minutes into the mission, Richard. Yeah, I know. It's fine. Don't worry, I've got it. Jake, how you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Good to see everyone in the
What
chat.
army is John painting for? John's actually not doing an army of this, and I'm not even painting a Black Templar. I'm just doing some bits on
Just
a
doing
Black
a guy.
Templar.
Yep, I'm just painting an Assault Intercessor, doing a very classic Space Marine blue. Theoretically, this will end up being an Emperor's Spear once I paint the helmet white and do some chapter insignia later down the line. But this is just a generic blue Space Marine to learn some techniques on, not a specific army. All right, so I've moved on to doing what I assume next is just the regular mid bone.
Actually, no.
No.
For now, what we want to do is move on to the brightest point. So here we've got something that looks reasonably like
glad I asked.
Paper that you've like covered with tea bags or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's done that school project or whatever. They had to make something that looks like it's old, and
Absolutely, yeah.
Done that. Now we're going to take some of the brightest white. I'm going to mix that in with our last highlight just to temper it down a little. And this is the final highlight, because if we go too far up to this, the distance we've got from our base color, which is our darkest shadow, our mid-tone, and our highlight gets too big. So what I was saying earlier on about how we can't have things being too far apart or it starts to look silly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a very small set of highlights, highlight only around the areas that you think should be brightest. So imagine we had a gradient going from the bottom of this to the top of this. Darkest here, lightest here. What I want you to do is just highlight the top, say, 40% of the purity seal.
Okay.
And then with a couple of small specular highlights, so again, we're going back to that term, how we were stippling before. We're going to put a couple of very small dots on the points where you think the purity seal gets a little extra exposure to the light due to its creases before this.
Gotcha. Okay, I can do that. All right, so just like a little highlight around the top 40% of the purity seal or so.
Because by just highlighting that small area, you're going to create a gradient that goes essentially along the seal.
Mm-hmm.
But then, once you've done that, any area you think, right, this is super bright, it's got a really sharp crease, we can do a little line. But otherwise, I'll go back to at the bottom here, just do some little specular highlights. Essentially, like I said, little dots. That was a little bit too big.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll just give us enough of a highlight there to bring all of the values. The value is how bright something is. High value is brighter, low value, darker. I'll match the values across the seal itself reasonably well, so that nothing stands out too far, but it still gives us a brighter finish where the highlight would come.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then we'll do some text.
Mm-hmm. Then
There's a couple of different ways of doing text on purity seals. What a lot of people do is they take some black paint and they do a wavy line that looks like somebody's fake moustache.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Classic.
what we won't be doing.
Oh, never mind. Okay, I just got really excited. I was like, I already know how to do that, Jay. This is great.
Do you? Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, let me show you an alternative.
Oh, okay, sure. Whatever you think is best.
Well, we're actually going to write.
Oh, jeez.
Let's see how your text works.
Yeah. You've never seen my handwriting. This isn't a good idea.
That's okay. I have to do handwriting in block capitals, otherwise even I can't read it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I type.
Brilliant. Cell phone generation right here.
Oof, ouch, okay. Not that young.
Brother, when you start getting as much grey in your beard as I've got, we'll call it even.
Not anytime soon. My hair is aging wonderfully.
Right.
All right, hit me up with it.
Okay, cool. What we're going to do, I'm going to take our Rhinox hide, which we were using earlier on. I'm going to thin this out, but if you go too thin, obviously you won't see what you've written. So we can't go like glaze consistency, because that's just going to give us like this weird impression of writing, not actual writing. So what we need to do is thin it to a point where we're past an edge highlight. It's got to be thinner than that, because you need it to flow off the brush really, really easily. So imagine it's a little bit more like that stipple that you were using earlier on. Yeah, that kind of thickness.
Okay.
You need to be able to paint these really nice, sharp lines. Okay. Now, if we were to do actual handwriting, when you think about the scale of this guy's hand, because it's a glove, is probably 2 of my hands. You can't see that here. 2 of my hands wide. So if we think that this purity seal is half of his hand wide, then that's the width of our purity seal. So if I just wrote a message here, it's going to be really, really small by the time we shrink it down to this size, right?
Yep.
So we're not going to see is the letters. What we will see is the shape, the general shape of text. So if I grab a bit of paper, that's probably the easiest.
Oh man, we're getting deep in the weeds here. I like it.
Which book is this? Oh, this is my games of 40k. So we go, just a bit of paper and a pen. Most people on a purity seal do black like this, right?
Yep.
Okay, and what they're doing here is they're simulating the rise and fall of letters. So you've got your P, your Q, B, T, etc., represented by high or low bits, and you'd imagine the middle line would be about here for the general writing. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do that, but we're going to level it up. So here's our purity seal. If this is our middle line for writing, what we're going to do is this with our brush. Like an EKG. Okay, and then that looks a lot more like somebody's got some really kind of crappy, shaky handwriting.
Yep.
But that looks more like writing than this does.
Agreed.
By
Okay.
far. So we take our nice thin bit of paint and we basically create that line instead of the more thicker, aggressive, wavy line. And obviously on something this small, it is tricky. So you want your brush almost perpendicular to the surface. You're working with just the tip, giggity, and you do those little lines up and down, but you concentrate much more on your line of text being the midline of what you've got, with just the odd up and down for a T, a B, a P, a Q, whatever it might be. And on something like a Dreadnought, where they've got bigger purity seals, vehicles, handmade ones, banners, all this sort of thing, this is absolutely the right technique to use. Celestine, you're a Sisters player, and the purity seals that she's got are absolutely a perfect example of places you can do this really, really well.
Okay. Funny enough, my Celestine actually is an Age of Sigmar model. I used the Andrasta as a base. However, I definitely have plenty of purity seals within that Sisters army.
Okay.
You know, the Triumph of St. Catherine has more purity seals than like a Grey Knight's army, which is insane.
Yeah, they get pretty big as well. You've got a lot of room in your canvas there. But now that looks a lot more like writing. And as well, because we've used really thin lines and we've kept them kind of close together, it actually looks more like it's been written on. In fact, if I smallificate this view a little bit, we'll grab a purity.
If you pardon, smallificate.
Smallificate.
Yeah, of course.
It's the opposite of embiggen. It's a perfectly cromulent word.
Shrink.
But one purity seal. One purity seal.
Yep, fair.
And we've got writing that fills the width of the seal. And we've got nice lines with a few extra height letters, but mostly letters that sit around the middle of each line. And if we have something that just fits a little bit more as a purity seal, and especially on something larger like your Sisters, vehicular purity seals, like freehand, you could paint a bit of parchment, like the shape of parchment, like we've done on this great big monstrous thing. But imagine this was vertical, and you could do lines like this all the way across it, not needing to write actual writing, because you've got something that has much closer to the impression of writing at scale, using this technique to make something that looks real and normal, rather than something that's a overly exaggerated, way too stylized version of text.
Yeah, which is the only way to
Like
actually
that.
get it readable. Okay.
So there you go. Nice and simple.
Yeah, simple. I just have to figure out how to make my brush stay that still.
This is another one that I think if you've got slightly shakier hands, this is a good one.
Yeah, then you just draw a straight
as long as
line.
you keep the brush at the same distance from the model, you're going to be doing this kind of thing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you can exaggerate a little bit here and there. So hopefully that's another way you can use what you might consider a disadvantage in a way that helps to move attention away from certain parts of a model towards others to create that look. Well, there you go, dude.
Okay.
Security seals, soft bits of armor, leather, cloth. Like the same techniques apply to both of those two, so you can now paint both leather and cloth. Nice and easy.
All right, I like it. Perfect. Well, that I think that about wraps us up for the day.
Pretty sure it does. Yeah.
There you go.
And the next one we'll do faces. Now, unfortunately,
Exciting.
As I mentioned to John earlier on, I will not be here next week. I'll be coming back from Warhammer Fest, or still playing at Warhammer Fest. Depends on how I feel Monday morning.
That's right. I feel I forgot that that Warhammer Fest is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, not Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which just blows my mind.
It's because in the UK we have a national holiday on Monday.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, so it just happens to be
Do
good
you
timing.
in the US as well? For us, it's May Day.
We don't. That's not a thing.
Cool.
I don't mean in the US. I mean that's not a thing in general anywhere. May Day.
Most of the UK doesn't think that May Day is a thing. It's just we have a bank holiday.
Oh, fair enough. All right.
It's no more are we going around into farmers' fields dancing around maypoles and all the other bollocks that May Day was originally for 50, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we just have a day off. So Warhammer Fest is Saturday to Monday. I will certainly not be undefeated going into the Monday. I'm going to take my Nurgle Demons and play on some terrible terrain. So it'll be fun, if nothing else. So we might play another 3 games, or we might just come home. Who knows?
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much, as always, Jay, for joining me. Thank you for your expert wisdom and Mohawks. For anyone who is enjoying this stream, wants a little more hobby in their life, unfortunately, I'm only here once a week. But Jay is live more than once a week. And so you should check out
Truman Show at this point.
Yeah. So you should check out his YouTube and Twitch channels, Mohawk Miniatures, and give him a little bit of support. He certainly deserves it. As well, if you want to give us a little bit of love, like the video, press the button, please. Share it with your friends, subscribe, and of course, check out the link in the description below where you can get access to the Art of War War Room with a free 3-day trial. So if you want to check that out, now is the best time. We've made a lot of renovations in the War Room recently, so now is a great time to check it out. And you can really get some of that good stuff right as we're going into 10th edition. So now's a good time to be learning. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Jay, I will talk to you in not 1 but 2 weeks. And well, I'll be live here with some other stuff, so make sure you stay tuned. Bye for now.
Take care. Peace out.